Michael Saylor starting to buy the dip. Is the crash over? Today we're going to break it down for you. You're going to love it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. We're talking about Bitcoin today, and when you think about Bitcoin, you probably are considering putting it in something like a crypto IRA or maybe self-custody, but the key here is holding it long term. One of the things you can do is jump over to iTrust Capital and just join their program for crypto IRAs. You can buy, sell crypto over there, gold, silver, also Bitcoin, Ethereum, even some altcoins. So check it out. Use our link down below. It's going to give you a $100 funding reward to get you started. The good thing is you don't have those tax events that occur when you put it in an IRA. So that's kind of a nice thing. Always seek financial advice for those kind of things, though, because everybody is different. Let's get into it today. We're going to go into this topic right here, and that is MicroStrategy buying another almost 12,000 Bitcoin, 786 million. Now they hold about 226, I believe, but he put out a tweet. What was his numbers? Was he at 226? Yeah. So there we go. Master holding 226,000 Bitcoin. His average holding it at 36,798 per Bitcoin. So nice hodl position right there for MicroStrategy. Probably still one of the best plays, I think, in finance, maybe to date in terms of historical analysis on that. Make sure and fill out the poll today. We'll try to get to some of that, but also if you have some questions, put them in over on the side. I'll try to get to some of those and jump into that. I'm going to just check out our queue. Good. We'll try to get to some of that here toward the end as we break some of this down for you guys today. And again, thanks again for tuning in on the live stream. If you're brand new to our show, first thing I ask you guys to do is subscribe and hit that like button right now. It helps other people learn a little bit more about what's happening in crypto in general, but especially for today, the topic being Bitcoin. I think the other thing you have to kind of consider when you look at Bitcoin is how does it start to maybe fare against Ethereum? And of course, we all know what that means. Ethereum's ETF could be right here on the precipice of an entry into the future of where finance is going. They're getting so good at it that they're starting to do the ads. So here was Bitwise. Let me play this one for you, and we're going to kind of start it. You'll probably recognize some of this, but let me run this for you guys.
Hello, I'm Ethereum.
And I'm big finance.
You okay? You look really tired.
Just calling it a day.
But it's 4 p.m.
Yeah, and I've been working nonstop since 9:30 this morning, so.
9:30? You don't say.
Yep. You'd want a little shut-eye too if you've been moving billions around the world.
Well, actually I do. You know, stablecoins, NFTs, loans. People can access me 24/7.
What?
But look, everyone's different. You should get your rest. You've had a long day.
Well, I have, haven't I?
Definitely. You'll get after it tomorrow.
Tomorrow's Saturday.
Monday. You'll get after it again on Monday.
Monday.
I love it. Do you guys remember those get a PC, get a Mac ads? I think that was Justin Long that was doing that. That would have been great if you'd put Justin Long in there. So anyway, but the cool thing here with this ad is this tweet right here. Capture a piece of crypto history. First national TV spot minted as an NFT. 50% of proceeds is going to go over to the Protocol Guild. So kind of fun. The point being is that major financial institutions now moving into an ETH ETF and putting that out there. So there's going to be some variations, I think, in terms of how investments are done on these ETFs. I want to go to a quick clip here. This, of course, is our friend over from Wolf of All Streets talking with Raoul Pal a little bit about kind of the conversion between Bitcoin and Ethereum and the maxis between both. Take a look.
Listen, I actually had a really interesting conversation, which will be out on Sunday, with Jack Mallers yesterday. We had never done a podcast, and he's, as hardcore as it gets, and he gave me the speech about everything to shitcoin, and we kind of had a light debate about it. But I get from their perspective, to some degree, at least his, if everything else is competing to be money, which is his argument, then I totally get that. But I think that if you frame Ethereum as NVIDIA, it's a very different situation.
And how I've just been on tour marketing for Exponential Age Asset Management, my fund of crypto hedge funds, and the story I've been trying to explain to people is you've got to understand what this space is about. Blockchain technology is a new technology layer of the internet, of which there's a bunch of decentralized businesses that sell block space, and they all have a different angle of why to buy their block space. Bitcoin is, we're the most secure, we can be used as money or a reserve asset. Ethereum's, hey, anybody can build on us. We're like this big open computing network. Solana's like, yeah, we can do that too, but we're kind of super fast and super cheap. Everyone's just selling block space, and they have a different story to tell. to attract people. And that's all that's really going on here. People turn it into some fight over money. That's Bitcoin's story, but it's not the whole industry story.
Yeah, as I said to him, to me, it's like a gold bug being super pissed off when someone who holds gold buys Alphabet stock or Amazon.
Yeah.
But I get the framing in the other way too. I just really view them as completely different asset classes.
I would agree with Scott, is that these are two different comparisons. I know that people would look at anything, but you know, in terms of, you know, pulling from one asset to the other, but I don't necessarily think of it that way. At least that's not the way I view it. I think Matt Hogan kind of puts it out right here. Good example of adding ETH to your portfolio, just to show you. And this is the way I think investors are going to look at this, especially in these 60-40s. This is a traditional portfolio on 60-40. You can kind of see the cumulative return right there versus a traditional portfolio with 5% allocation on Bitcoin. Then a traditional portfolio with 5% allocation on Bitcoin and 25% of that in ETH. Interesting point here, cumulative return much greater than, you know, the regular 60-40 primarily. That's the big story. But the fact that they're so unique and close to each other with ETH in the window. And I think that's the way it's going to be looked at by all sorts of investors. It's another asset. It's not a competing asset. It's just another asset for the great diversification in portfolios. So hopefully that's the way it plays out. I have a lot of friends that are, I would say Bitcoiners, not maxis, but they call themselves Bitcoiners. And I always agree with them that it's a great speculative asset and a store of value. And I get it. There's a great part of that. But I think ETH has its place, just like what Raul was saying. Trade Travel Chill kind of hits on it with a good example of some allocation here. I'd love to know you guys' thought on this allocation. 50% Bitcoin, 30% large caps. These are blockchain. 15% in medium caps, and then low caps in 5%. Would you put it out that way? I mean, that's not my mix. I'm just kind of curious what your mix would be if you were to balance that out in terms of just your crypto allocation. Also, kind of curious, what would be your percentage of crypto allocation to your entire portfolio? Let me know. Just drop some comments down below. I always love to get kind of feedback within that. Another tweet right here was Nate Garassi kind of coming in. Flurry of spot Bitcoin, or excuse me, ETH ETF S1 amendments all coming in tomorrow and Friday. This, I think, will be interesting coming in, especially tomorrow as we start to see this. But based on his analysis so far, still looking at a go date prior to July 4th. So, man, that's just around the corner here. That would be pretty big for Ethereum. I think we started to see a little bit of movement here. I'll show a chart here in a little bit on both ETH and on Bitcoin to kind of take a look at that as well. Love to get your kind of high-low on how that, or how you believe Ethereum and Bitcoin will perform against each other. Other things that are in the news that are really, I think, on top of what's happening, you know, from a legislative and also from the legal stance, even though we just saw ETH get the case being dropped by the SEC. Here's Kraken's motion to dismiss the lawsuit. And then, of course, they're saying that the SEC accuses Kraken of being unregistered, a broker-dealer. That's the whole thing. So Solana, Cardano, Algorand, etc., along with others. So Kraken also has been accused of operating an unregistered broker-dealer. And then you had all those tokens, including Flow, ICP, Mana, Matic, Near, OMG, and even, obviously, Solana. That's the question here. Kraken, of course, came out with a little bit of a different look on this. So their dismissal motion relies on the Howey test, saying the SEC has not alleged that the security transactions occurred on its exchange. This goes back to the same thing with Coinbase, but there are some things within the Coinbase scenario that play out a little differently. In the Coinbase case, and I've got a couple of tweets on that, but one of the things that's kind of interesting here is Kraken's hearing. This came in from Meta Lawman. Let me zoom in on that. Their hearing today should be interesting. Kraken's lawyers bring up the ETH ETF approvals, which is very inquisitive because I think that starts to bring in the issue of not only ETF approvals, but also dropping the case against Ethereum as a whole. So back to the whole point, very interesting points happening right now. Judge William Orrick, who had an uncle as the commissioner of the SEC back in the 50s. Nice note there. Thought I recognized that name. But anyway, kind of cool. Here's Eleanor. She's talking about the Kraken lawyers telling the judge that the SEC's digital asset ecosystems argument, this was from Judge Fela. Remember Judge Fela on the Coinbase case? Reference to it, or her Coinbase decision, is not grounded in law. And so they're basically going against the Coinbase decision from Judge Fela, but not from Judge Torres. So I know this gets kind of complex. Go back and watch some of our videos. We do a whole rundown on these, on the Judge Fela decision, on Judge Torres decision, which gets into the Ripple case. So you can kind of see the interactions here. But the point being is I think a lot of this is going to slowly move to the side as we get regulatory alignment, which I think is coming very soon, and the fact that the SEC feels as though they're starting to lighten up on some of these projects. And of course, as the Ethereum situation being one of the biggest. Other things that are happening, of course, is going to be stablecoins. And stablecoins, I think, is the key thing that will make this market mature. And when you look at it, stablecoin issuers now holding the 18th largest holder of US debt. This is significant. There's a couple of points within the article that I think are interesting to note. This is Tagus Capital pulling out this data, but they basically say issuers now cumulatively hold more than 120 billion in US treasuries. That makes them the world's 18th largest US debt, ahead of major current account surplus nations like Germany and South Korea. Tether, also the issuer of USDT, the world's leading dollar-pegged cryptocurrency stablecoin, alone holds 91 billion of that 120 billion. So pretty significant. USDC Circle holding another almost 30 billion, according to Tagus Capital. So what does this look like? Because I think people would look at this and I think, yeah, this is good for liquidity. It's good for what we'll see within what's happening in the EU. Because remember, MiCA is rolling out literally this week. By the end of this month, we're going to have stablecoin regulation in the EU. And that means a lot of things are going to start to move up on this chart right here. Just to give you an example, there's stablecoins. I mean, what's next? We got Saudi, Norway, Singapore, Brazil. I mean, they could literally move past some of these BRICS nations. Granted, remember that Tether is not necessarily going to be one of the big ones that is transacted in the EU because of some of the regulatory alignment and disclosure. USDC may make a move here on stablecoins going forward. So don't forget, drop some questions in over on the side. We'll try to get to some of those. And make sure and fill out the poll. I want to kind of get your opinion on where that's going. A couple of things that the SEC highlights as risk in stablecoin issue is this, of course, is on Circle's IPO bid. They hit on a few points, all of which I think will be put to rest as MiCA rolls this out. But one of the agency's concerns was tied to inadequate disclosures. It's the same thing that happens around Tether. And Barron's reported this on June 18th, citing documents obtained through public records. Circle initially made the attempt to go public in 2021. Does anybody remember that? I don't know if they remember that, but that plan did not pass through. And then the SEC requested that Circle add disclosures about the potential risk of their token be classified as security. Circle complied, all of that. I think this plays out positively for Circle because of what's happening in Europe. And I think that starts to shift the change and the tide here in the US, both from an SEC front, but specifically from a regulatory front, because I think that's the key right there. What else do we have here? Yeah, okay. So here's Jeremy Allaire. He's saying, hey, he's a little bit more bullish than he's ever been on crypto. I would kind of agree with Jeremy right now. A couple of points he hits on is he positioned to become the backbone of some of the most important tech applications around the world. And if we see the ramp up in Europe that we think we might see, this is going to get pretty dicey toward the end of the year, which I think is why we're going to see this as a political stump talking issue. And most likely it's going to come up in the debates coming up here very soon. So we'll get a chance to see it real time of what it's going to say there. Like prior waves of open internet infrastructure, this wave is growing and it's coming stronger and stronger every day. I mentioned this a lot with companies that I consult with, and we work in the, kind of the Fortune 500 area of retail and food service in different areas, but they're trying to understand blockchain. And one of the things I kind of give them is listen, if you look at the last evolution of tech, really there was two major technology components that made it move so quickly. One was social and the other was mobile. Now we're dealing with these three, this kind of trifecta of technology that is starting to map up. And that, of course, is AI, blockchain, and what we're going to see in the XR side of things, both AR, VR, all that ecosystem, immersive experience. All that's going to be tied to gaming and all that. You kind of get the point of how all this plays into a bigger connection, which I think is good for Bitcoin. It's good for Ethereum. It's good for a lot of these kinds of technologies because it mainstreams all of this stuff right to the front of everybody's thinking. So the other thing that gets mainstreamed in front of everybody's thinking is how is Bitcoin going to be affected by the US presidential debates? Many of the analysts say probably not a big deal. I would say we're going to see a little bit of movement, but I think this is going to affect it more long term. Here's the reason why. Imagine the viewing audience that we will see coming in on this debate. That's number one, is exposure. And then the argument that you're going to probably see both for, maybe against. I'm not sure that the Biden camp will go against completely, but I think it's the positioning of the candidates that will make the difference. Now, it won't make an immediate difference because some people may not even have exposure to Bitcoin, but I think you'll see a lot of wallets and a lot of Coinbase accounts opening up at that time. So both Biden and Trump have well-documented stances on this. Mark has already kind of factored in their positions. So anything that really changes, I don't think it moves the market today, but it does, I think, have an effect on the potential for new people acquiring, blockchain and a lot of digital assets in the future. I'm kind of curious, when you look at that, are you guys voting your book? Are you voting for a candidate that is pro-crypto? Are you trying to consider that? What's going to make your decision for how you guys vote this out? And this happens more than just in the presidential race. This is also happening in the Senate as well. There's a lot of campaigns. Our friend John Deaton, of course, going up against Senator Warren. All of those matter because what will happen in the coming years is a lot more regulatory alignment. This is just the beginning of what we will see. Sure, Fit 21, and of course, the stablecoin bill, I think, will have some of the bigger implications, but it still needs time to develop, and you'll see so much more integrated in there. So pretty good. One thing that is kind of noted here is that it could be interesting to have the market impact on its discussion around capital gains tax. This was the whole idea about crypto taxation policies in particular, but more around capital gains and how Biden and the administration may be looking at that in the future. All right, we're going to get to a few questions, but I do want to go over to our poll real quick. Let's take a look. All right, your average on Bitcoin price better than Michael. Everybody's saying barely over. Okay, interesting. That's an interesting poll there. So 51% holding that position better than Michael Saylor. So 51% of you guys have been buying all along. I love that. Couple of notes here. Cryptologist says anyone bearish on crypto now will lose money. 100%. I'm in on that one. Tether will bring down Bitcoin. I don't know about that, NF. Now, don't get me wrong. Tether has a major problem, or we see a liquidity event occur. There would be some pretty big issues there. And of course, it would kind of be an I told you so event. But I'm not sure, even though, Tether, 130 billion. That's true. A lot there. Fox Mulder says Polo's a bunch of liars. A bunch of liars, he says out there. Mulder's always wanting to get in there and just like cause a little trouble in the comments. Mark Ryan says, any updates on the Solana Chapter 2 phone? I haven't seen. Notice you said phone there, because I'm still curious as to whether or not it's going to be a phone. This may be a gaming device or some other mobile device of some sort. Who knows what Solana's got up their sleeve. No institutions are moving to ETH. No institutions are moving to ETH. I think you're wrong, Paul. So, my fellow brethren and Paul, I think you're going to see institutions going all in on the ETH ETFs for sure. Non-ETH altcoins. ETH, I can't. Walter's, he's just going off in here. I love it. What do we have here? Alan says, my average Bitcoin purchase price much better than Saylor's. It's just I don't have as many. Well, thank goodness that you're better. Not thank goodness that you don't have as many. But who's got more right now? I mean, I think only Countries and BlackRock has got more than Michael Saylor. Maybe the Winklevoss guy. No, they're not that. But they're in the top 10. All right. Anyway, you guys, if you're not in our Diamond Circle, by the way, get in right now. It's a great place to get additional content. We do all sorts of cool things over there, including an airdrop. We've got an airdrop going on, happening for all our Diamond Circle members and our advanced memberships. So check it out. Go over to our website. You'll see it. You can register your wallets over there, and you'll be part of that when we do our snapshots and start our airdrop summer program. A lot of cool things happening there. Make sure and follow me on X, just @PaulBaron. I'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.